to get this thing a popping. All right. Snap, snap. It's my official start sound, I guess. Hello, Startup people, and welcome back to today's ArtStream episode number 6. And today we'll continue with the second part of artists that I like. We'll do some gesture sketching, and we'll talk about SunSon later in the back half of this episode. So yeah, in the beginning, I want to try to get this formula down, a process for myself. I like to have processes so I already know a structure of how this thing is supposed to go. So far the structure is the first, 5, 10, maybe even 15 minutes, if we have something in the beginning, notes on the channel, whatever I want to get out of, or for your information beforehand, get that out and talk about what we're going to be doing in the episode. I'll usually state that in the beginning, and then we'll move on to the main event topic today. That is the artist inspire, or artist that I am inspired by. Last week was Pepe Larraz, a great comic artist. I think he's from Spain. I've noticed that a lot of artists are now international. It's a lot more international than it used to be. And the Europeans, manga artists, those from Korea and China, we're artists worldwide doing big things, and it's lovely to see. So yeah, last week was Pepe Larraz. This week is Claire Wendling. And then we'll do a SunSon, which is a character I've been working on, trying to develop as we develop this show also. He is also going to be the title image thumbnail for each ArtStream episodes, probably for this year. And then next year we'll move on to Moon Daughter. But for SunSon, we'll do that at the second half of this. And then we'll do our outros, and we'll be out of here. Again, I'm trying to keep these episodes within an hour, because I have work, and I guess a lot of you have something that you should be doing. But if you want to break out your art supplies, your computer digital tablets, a sketchbook or whatever, and just draw as, I'm going through my my spiel, that is awesome. And that's what we're here for. Right? We're supposed to get better art. So that is the notes. So let's get to our main topic. Artist samples. And that is... Oh wait, first let's talk about... Well, first let's do Claire Wendling, basics of her. Claire Wendling. I found... Wait, did I find this artist? I think somebody else... I was taking art classes in college, and I believe somebody had an art book. I believe. I might be misremembering. But these are the two art books that I have of hers. The one on the left, is a book that she did a bunch of sketches, and then I don't know if it was years later, she redid those sketches, and you could see how she changed, right? And that was the cool part about this one on the left, the blue covered one. And then on the right is like a compilation of a lot of her artwork, and we'll be taking a look at some of that. But she has a very there's a unique look of European artists, right? It's it's almost like a fusion between what what they've learned being where they are in Europe. Like there's all this influence, art influences from, the English, the French, the Spanish, the Italians, right? There's this hodgepodge and a mix of art and art styles. Like every place had their own distinct art style. Eastern Europe, Western Europe, all of that area, like even from Northern Africa, like all this stuff just blends together. And then we also have in the current era the influx of Japanese and Asian aesthetic art coming in, some American Western stuff coming in. So there's this mix that I really like of European artists. And I noticed that with the advent of the internet and the globalization of everything, that things have become a lot more, or it's more visible, right? We can see different artists everywhere doing cool stuff, which is awesome about the internet. So for myself, we're going to talk about Ahmed Aldoor. He made this cool little character design thing, this chart that talks about realistic designs and stylized designs. And then there's realistic fantasy down at the lower left, and at the lower right is stylized fantasy. And what I like about this is that it clearly defines like the 4 quadrants. Right? Where do you sit yourself artistically? This is what you have to ask yourself as an artist. Myself personally, I always wanted to be an animator when I was growing up in my childhood. But then there was also this influx of video game art, comic books, animation. And so all of this got mixed up with my own interests. And I say I lean more towards one, stylized, right? Realistic doesn't exactly hold my attention as much as just the straight up stylized. I like designs and shape languages, colors, and right. And you can do that more on the stylized side. But also on the lower half, the realistic fantasy and the stylized fantasy. I like some realistic fantasy, but again, I lean more towards stylized fantasy. I like the like chibi designs where you can manipulate the head ratio to the body and all of that. They don't have to look realistic. I find that more enjoyable for myself. This is just my own personal. And the examples that are given for realistic fantasy is Bloodborne. Say, some of the Final Fantasies can lean, especially nowadays, more towards the realistic fantasy. But on the stylized side, like Final Fantasy IX, Zelda, Mario RPG, more on the stylized fantasy. But I like stylized. And that's just myself personally. So back to Claire Wendling. So again, with these books, right, this on the left book has a stylizedness to it, but it leans a little bit more realistic than the book cover on the right. Right. So let's take a look at some things that I enjoy. Wait, do I want to show this one or this one? Let's start with this one first. So this is a 2-page from the book on the right, the compilation one. And what I like about it, there's It's like the one on the upper right. This right here is, I like the design of it. Right? You got the moon behind this werewolf, wolf-headed guy, this lady here, and the sword. So you got the circle, the design of the blocked in black, and then the sword. So you can feel a chunk up and down circle, right? That, I like the design of that. But also, it makes the wolf head especially pop out, and you think, okay, moon, werewolf. Not exactly sure why the large sword, but we'll run with it as fantasy. The one right next to it I like because of there's a central figure, right, surrounded by wolves, but the composition wise, there's a lot of space here. So there's a busyness up here. There's intricate, detailed inking and characters and a movement. You can feel this flow of everybody's moving, alive. The water, which is done very simply. That's cool. Over this sepia toned or coffee stained color. I like that. And on this other side, the one that strikes out to me is the Medusa. I've always liked mythology folk tales and fantasy creatures and stuff from different areas like the Slavic, Greek myths, Norse myth. All that stuff I think is pretty cool. But I like also the design of this. Medusa is what comes to mind initially, right? Snake hair, but it's gray, well, a blue gray. Very simply, right? The dynamic of the three, that blue gray in the background, the black, and then the white. Right? The black and white defines her, and then the space that she inhabits. I like that design right here. It's beautiful. Again, another lady with some wolves, but very different from this one. There's light, there's dark, right? And usually when you paint is just an interplay between lights and darks. And that's why usually if you make a midtone, no matter what the midtone is, it could be a coffee stained sepia or a bluish gray, right? That will be your midtone. And then you have the darks, like in the Medusa one, the ink is the black, that's the darks, and the lights are within the figure. Right? And painting is just an interplay between that mid-tone, and then you push your darks, which is behind her, and your lights, which is the foreground, and the figure herself, and the wolves are that mid-tone bleeding into the darks, right? So it's a play between lights and darks and mid-tones. I think this is a Beauty and the Beast. Again, you've got the darks, you got her, and she cuts out the frame of the character behind her. So a neutral background, darks, and he's within the darks and the light, and then she is the lightest thing, and she pops out from him with that. And then there's this Minotaur guy. That one's just okay, and this one's that. But we're gonna move on to another one. Now this, I have looked at these very often as especially when I'm inking, and I'm thinking about how to render the characters and inks, because there is no midtone in bold black and white images. Sometimes you need that clearly defined, and then how you can do a white, where the white is the greater amount. Like this is 8% white with maybe 20% black. But you can see the image defined, while this lady and I guess Cerberus, which is a three-headed dog, is mostly black with the characters popped out in white. So either or works, and that's what I've always been trying to study. Right? You can have mostly white with black, or mostly black with white. Right? It's coming at it from two different angles, and it also depends on, like if you're doing daytime scenes, you could do more the white with the black, and for nighttime scenes, more black with the white. But I just like how, like this one with what you call this, a minotaur creature, a lady on top, this area like a midtone sitting behind the characters, and some midtones here with, you can tell it's fuzzy or furry, right, on the arms, the shoulders, and deep blacks going to the head, right? Where's the area of most detail? And that is here. And so that's where your eye will go to. But there's design of the black and the, what would you call it? Maybe brick wall, stone wall and whatnot behind them as a backdrop, cutting out the figures. That's nice. I like that. This one I like slightly, but the centaur catching a horse, but the horse is halfway, right? Blacks, lighter, but the eye punches that out. And then the main area of detail is here, but then there's also all this white, and then areas of black. Right? And then if you have that flow, sometimes that can help too. Well, a lot of times. If you can feel your way through an image, like where do you want the eyes to linger? What can lead into? Right? Is there something that walls off so your eyes don't leave the page? All of this stuff can be thought of. The lady standing upon skulls with a sword in hand, right? And the hair mimics what she's wearing, right? Whether this is a cape or a dress, right? But that mimic between the style of the inking mimics what her hair is doing. So mimicry is also a cool design feature. I like that. And let's talk about this one. This is, I think, one of my favorites on the page. Another Medusa-like creature in a tree, maybe. But there's this skeleton behind her. It's just, I like how this is designed. Right? Her arms are open wide. Her arms, tree limbs, stable, well, not stable base, but the base, and it leads upwards. Her hair, snakes, right? And then the darkness of this tree area pops out her arm and the snake head up here. The snakes can be darker, so the one in front of it pops out. Right? So it's a blending of dark, light, and then you fill in the negative spaces. Right? I like that. That is awesome. That is awesome. But I like the dynamic posing just the style, the way of, it's gorgeous. I love it. And that is why Claire Wendling is one of my favorites. And it's not exactly realistic. There's a bit of unrealism, fantasy. I wouldn't say exactly cartoonish, but right, it's not exactly gritty realism. And I think that adds to me. So yeah, these two examples are of Claire Wendling. And those two were from this second book. The first one's good too, but the second one is my favorite. So that was Claire Wendling. Now let's do some sketching. I'm making good on time. All right. So during the week, I was doing more SunSon. And just for those who have just come in, SunSon is a character that I'm developing while we're going through these art streams, right? Give you a taste of sort of what my process is. And first off, I talk about the three ideas or concepts that made SunSon possible. So the three concepts were blonde. This is, oh man, what's his name? Something Phoenix. Simon Phoenix. Simon Phoenix from Demolition Man. Again, awesome film. Wesley Snipes plays Simon Phoenix, the villain to, I want to say Rocky, but that is not his name. Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone is the cop who is from our time, or the 90s era time. And this is the villain, Simon Phoenix. He gets captured and he goes into the future from this experiment. And Sylvester Stallone also goes into the future, and then it's hijinks and hilarity. I love this movie, Demolition Man. And then Gaara of the Sand is Naruto character, and he has a gourd on his back made of sand, and sand comes out of it. And the sand is both defensive and offensive. And I figure for the character of SunSon, do I have a... Yes, I do. Okay. So SunSon, the idea for him was he's a cosmic being. He has blonde hair. And I don't know why Simon Phoenix always pops out. Maybe because he has the blonde hair in Demolition Man. And I put those two together. And then he has gold bits. He can control gold as defensive or offensive. But he's a cosmic being. And that is what we are pretty much developing just for funsies, really. Right. And a lot of my process is just that. I'm taking ideas that sometimes don't make sense to me. Sometimes I'm just thinking of different far off things, and somehow my brain will connect them. And then I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea or a cool concept or something. And sometimes I won't even act on it in the moment, right? And it'll take me something else, and I'll see something later, whether in real life, on television, or somebody speaking to me, or just off of out of my head. I'm like, oh, this idea and this idea somehow go together and it creates whatever that I'm thinking of. So that is the concepts for SunSon. And last week we did, like, this was a gesture drawing, which is usually how I start. I have a process usually for art making, and that's usually a gesture. I do a lot of them. So let's see. Right. Note all that. If I can. Here we go. And also I take notes when I'm starting an image. Right? So just write it out. What do you want this character? It doesn't have to make sense, right? You'll rearrange these in your mind and you'll think of other things that could feed into it. So again, notes, I wrote cosmic being. His name is SunSon because I like to me in my mind, there's a connection between the S-U-N, the sun in the sky, and S-O-N, the sun, a child that could be a son, right? But I thought, okay, those things, was that purposeful, right? Did ancient man, as cars go by, I thought that did ancient man think, okay, sun in the sky, apple of my eye, sun as a child, was that why they are so close? And I thought, if that is so, then maybe why aren't daughters called moons, right? And so that's kind of how my mind works sometimes. I'm like, okay, why do these things sound similar? And that was just an idea that I had. And because of the sun, I thought gold, maybe he has gold or blonde, a blondish gold hair, cosmic eyes with a golden sun as the pupil, here depicted like as orange, that he's of the future or futuristic. Because if we're playing off of Moon Daughter, I want her to be traditional and SunSon to be more futuristic. And the Eye of Ra, in Egyptian mythology, Ra is the sun god, and he is represented by an eye. And you can see that on ancient Egyptian sculptures and reliefs. And I always thought that was cool. I haven't figured out what I'm going to exactly do with some of this, but this is where I'm going. So again, last week, as a cosmic being, I thought of the character, cosmic eyes, sun pupils, blondish, yellow blonde hair, a cosmic being. So I have some textures that I inverted and then erased everything out to make this cosmic speckled patterning. And that was the concept, right? This is early stage concepts for me. But I always start somewhere, and that somewhere is little tiny gestures. Right? So this is just a buildup of stuff. So if I remove that texture, he got his full figure. I worked on it's exactly the same. I just blew this up, maybe drew a little bit on top to define things a little bit, but not too much. I'm still working out the character, so I'm mostly going for speed. So if I take away something else, sun eyes, right? The blonde hair, even the gesture. I can take away these as well. Well, I'll leave that one. So, thumbnails. Right? If you have any ideas, just start drawing. Right? Usually I have to get warmed up. I got to get into a flow. And usually my gestures start off as just chicken scratch. Right? I'm playing with posing and whether I want it standard. Is he a bold pose? Is it a more closed off pose? Is he seated? Is there a hint of attitude? Is he full straight on looking at the camera? Is he 3/4 off to the side? Right? Whatever I can think of, I usually try it. And then once I find something I like, then I blow it up. Well, I make a copy, erase everything else out, blow it up, and then work on top. So again, I got the character just blown up. I worked on the face a little bit, and then did the texture, skin, the eyes, and the hair. Now from this past week, boop, again, started with some gestures, right? Different posing, and also if it helps sometimes, like if you want an action pose, or a swordsman pose, or a sports pose, sometimes the internet, you go on the internet, look at just what are the gestures, just figure out the gestures, right? That's all you really need in the beginning. Right? What is the overall basic feel and flow of the characters? Right? And you can mess with it. What works at small scale usually works on a larger scale. So I always start very small, very loose. It doesn't matter how it looks at this point. You're just getting your idea out. Just get the idea out. So the gestures led to this character, which is this right here. I liked the attitude in this gesture. So again, I duplicated it, erased everything out, enlarged it, and then it's just layers on layers. So we've got the cosmic texture that I used, and I just cut that out into the shape of his figure, his hair, well, his hair and eyes, that's the body, and that's the skin. Right. But again, we're trying to find the character. I have no idea exactly what this character will be overall in time, but we got to start somewhere. You just got to get your ideas out, no matter how weird they are, how strange, how incomplete in the beginning. You just got to get your ideas out. Maybe that's why I did. Okay. So again, let's go to gestures. For the B, P, and that's the G pen. Increase the size. And so let's say I wanted him looking straight into the camera. Let's make that dark. If I wanted the character looking straight into, right, maybe he has his arms crossed. And this is the chicken scratch I usually do in the beginning. Nothing fancy. You're just trying to get your ideas out. Right? That's it. And then you just try a lot of different ones. Let's make this smaller. Command T. Hold the shift because I want to lock that. All right. And I could just sit down for an hour and just do this. Command D to deselect. Back to the P with a pen tool. Right, let's see what else. If we wanted to have them seated, let's say, and sometimes doing a stick figure can help. So one leg, let's say one leg's out. Let's say this arm. And just mess around, play around, don't. Especially in the beginning stages, I try not to get too attached. I try not to make anything gorgeous because you're just trying to get an idea that works for you. Let's say the shoulders are like that. He's got one arm down and one arm. That's right, like this. And usually I have a problem with heads. When I do the head first, the body is usually too large and I need to resize the head. So sometimes I do the body first and then do the head or some semblance of a head after. What else? We could do a... So yeah, the circle for me is enough to indicate where the head placement would be. Maybe he's lying down, shoulders. And right, hips would be somewhere here. Let's say one leg is straight and another. Right. Again, we're not doing anything too involved, too specific. You're just this is what I call searching. Right? I'm trying to find poses or something that looks interesting enough to me to then develop further. In the beginning, I just pretty much just draw garbage. Right? I even have like a folder called garbage that is just me just noodling and doodling around. You know, not thinking of anything, just drawing. Unscripted, right? Maybe that would work. Because this guy is a blank slate so far. He has no real emotions, and I'm wondering, okay, so what would his emotions be? If Moondot is going to be the calm, cool one, maybe he has a more fiery temperament. So what is more an aggressive stance? So, or cocky stance. Like, see, this to me feels a bit cocky. Shoulders, hip tilt. So if you're Right, and maybe pointing. Right, again, I'm not spending too much time on it. And I also try to do straights versus curves. If you have a straight, try to have maybe the opposite side doing not that. So, what can I say? Let's see. All right. If the character is straight, and then maybe the limbs are bent. But it always depends on what is the character. If you know what the character is, it's easier to define what the poses are. But since this guy's a blank slate for me, I have to find it. Right? What feels like this character? I like this one. This one's pretty good. Sometimes I'll mark it with a circle. Ones that I don't like, I'll do an X. It's like, nah. I like this one. This, nah. This is kind of cool. I could probably do something with that. This, no. Again, in the beginning, you're just trying to get ideas. For blank slates, if you're building your own characters, it's a blank slate. And you don't know who are these characters yet. Box for the hips, egg shape for the rib cage, the limbs. This one. Where do you want to go out? Like so. And again, if we have straight legs, maybe his arms are bent. Or if his limbs are down, then maybe his so sometimes I'll have two poses on one figure until I figure it out. And then I erase out what I don't need or what has been eliminated. It all depends. Right? There is no right or wrong way at this stage. It's all just a drawing. Is there anything I want to develop further? Let's see if we can take this one. I kind of like this one. So, I kind of like this one too. I'll take this one. Changed my mind. Okay, so on the gestures, we go to layer, duplicate layer. Make that invisible on this copy. I then select everything. So M for the lasso tool. We'll go around this whole thing. And delete. I can bring that back if I want to. But let's see. So Command D, Get the figure. Command T, transform. And it will scale it up. Hold shift if you want to keep it locked to the proportions. If you don't want the proportions locked, don't hold the shift, and you can make it wider. You can make it thinner. Let's make it a little bit wider. And a little larger. Okay. Enter. Command D to deselect. Let us draw on top of this. Okay, so from my series of how I start the art process, I usually start with shapes, and that's kind of what this phase is. So P for the pen tool. So the circle for the head, we can help define that a little bit more. The rib cage is an oval. The hips are a square or a modified box. Modified box. We got that side plane here. So it's 3/4 turned away from us. He's not looking straight at us. He's turned to my right, screen right. And then you can do the limbs. You can do circles for joints. So the knee joints, elbow joints, wrists, and ankles. And you can have cylinders to connect. And let's change this a little bit. For the hand, let's make it relaxed. So open palm. Again, open palm. Usually your index finger is a little bit straighter than your middle finger, ring finger, and pinky curve in just a little bit more. For the feet, I have a 3 section. There's the heel. There's the foot pad. Right, the base and the foot pad, and then the toes. So again, got the base, foot pad, toes. You can't quite see the heel because of the angle. And then from here, we put on some basic anatomy, right? So the pectoral muscles, well, clavicle, I kind of have a slight indication here. Clavicle, we got the trapezius, the deltoid, latissimus dorsi on the back, going to the external obliques with the love handles, pectoralis major. And usually there's some indication of, there's a little dimple here. The rectus abdominis, the 6-pack, but your rib cage, the sternum comes down, right? And then there are free-floating ribs, right? But this is about where the sternum ends. Rectus abdominis goes to the belly button. The upper is the 6-pack, the lower goes into the groin area. The gastrocnemius of the calf. foot. Right. But I do some light indications of the muscles. And then I will tricep on the back, the bicep on the front. It's usually a little bit of a triangle. The kneecap or the patella. The patellar tendon comes down. And I think the head is slightly too small. This is what I usually talk about. We can erase, hard eraser, get rid of this because we don't need it. The M for the lasso tool. I'm using Clip Studio Paint. I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier. Which is what this and Photoshop is what I mostly use to draw and paint. Mostly Clip Studio. So Command T, we want to lock the size, so hold Shift, scale this up a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. Command D, Enter, now Command D. Back to the P for the pin. Let's give him an actual cranium, the back part of the head, where the brain is housed. Now once I have something this far, and then I can work on the face. That right now I'm getting the head structure down. So it's 3/4. He's not looking directly at us. So a 3/4 turn on the head. E for the eraser. We'll go to the kneaded eraser. And I'm using a pen tablet so I can use the pressure to erase, but also keep it. Erase and keep. I'm just trying to knock it back so that I can rebuild on top of this. Okay, so P for the the pen tool. Again, we'll reinforce some of this. Because his hair is short, I can figure out where the back of the skull. Okay. Reintroduce. All right, on a 3/4 turn, there's this side plane. Right, the hairline near the top, eyebrow ridge, eye line, nose line, mouth, and chin. Right, we should have probably established where the center. When I was starting to draw, I had to have this stuff, the basic structure drawn in a particular order for myself. But once you get used to it, you can kind of riff and do things out of order, out of sequence. Sometimes you just leave things out because you're like, I know where that is. Okay, the ears are between the eyebrow, the eye line, and the nose. Somewhere between there is where the ears rest. The jaw, or the mandible, is attached to the skull proper. Now I still don't know, do I want him to be a more youthful looking character? Again, we're trying to figure out what this character is. Do I want him hard-jawed? Or do I want him to be more youthful? More youthful would have less defined jaw and more rounded, curves. I'm not sure. Okay, so oh man, where'd the time go? Okay. It's okay, so eyebrow ridge about here. Eyes within that. Right, and the eyes are within the socket. The nose, there's a nasal cavity behind the cartilage. And we just want a placement of where this nose will be. We don't need too much. It goes into the mouth. I think I want fuller lips than that. Okay, cheeks. Cheeks. Because I want some indication of where the cheekbones are and how that goes into and around the mouth and towards the chin. Okay. Nose. Eyebrows would be on the eyebrow ridge. Eraser tool. Let's scale that down a little bit. Wow. Once I start, it's hard to stop. That's one of the best things about drawing. Also one of the worst things about drawing. And usually for myself, getting started is the hardest part. So I sometimes have to trick myself where I'm just like, just put down one line, right? Just get in there just for a minute. Nothing strenuous, just make a line. And that's a trick. Because I know once I sit down and draw a line, at a certain point, I can't stop. I think the cheeks are too big. Again, we're trying to figure out what the character is, so there is no wrong. There is what I don't like. And usually you'll find that for yourself. Sometimes things just, it's like, nope, that's not it. Nope, don't like that. Nope, I could do that better. And again, once I have some of what I need, I can erase things, redevelop them. It's better to find that nose. And let's bring that eyebrow ridge. Bring that back. Yeah. I keep looking at the time because you gotta go. Okay. All right, we'll call it here today. I said we'll call it here today. I am not listening to myself. Again, this is the gift and curse. Once you start, you don't want to stop. And in the beginning, I like to keep zoomed out and keep repairing and drawing things over again, as it kind of helps me in the beginning area just to figure things out. Yeah. Just a little bit off. And we'll round out that jog. Round that out. Okay. Let's do the hairline. I don't exactly know what is hairline. Usually when you look at different people, their hairline is different for different people. Like you could have a widow's peak, could have that clean line of the start of the hair. It's something to work with. Okay, so that's 11. We're going to call it. Pencils down, pencils down. All right. So for today, we kind of just messed around. SunSon did over some gestures. What I think about when I do gestures, which isn't much, I'm just trying to find something that I think is interesting that I can then build off of. But usually in the beginning, they don't look like much. They don't look like much at all. And also it helps if you want actual reference, the internet, like if it's sports, they have great range of motion stuff that you can do gestures off of. It's also good practice. But it depends on what you're going for. So for the outro, that is SunSon and Claire Wendling, artists that I like, for ArtStream episode number 6. Thank you for joining me. I have been Trey Hodges. You can find my work at treyhodges.com. Power to all of the creators. And I will see you next week, where we will do Marco Cecchetto as the artist whose work I thoroughly enjoy, along with probably finishing this gesture sketch that I built up a bit. We'll probably do some more of that next week as we try to find this character. So take care and keep shining, and I will see you next week. Bye.